Welcome to the TC Dojo from Single Sourcing Solutions. The TC Dojo is a TechCom community that is driven by you. Tell us what you want to learn. You choose the topics, and we find the experts.
In the TC Dojo open session today, we have Dr. Jennifer Good as our visiting dojo master. Jennifer has spent her career in instructional design, computer-based training, strategic content design, development, deployment. She consults in a huge variety of industries and is the co-director of the world's oldest online master's program. She's been teaching as an online instructor since 2005. She's the faculty advisor for SWE, the Society of Women Engineers, and is a senior member of the STC. She teaches students how to frame problems, communicate solutions, and design information in technical communications courses, instructional design courses, managing people, projects, web design, and social media. I saw her presentation at STC Virtual Summit earlier this year, and I'm grateful she agreed to be our TC Dojo visiting master today. Now, she'll answer your questions at the end, but be sure to type them in as we go so you don't forget what you wanted to ask. All right, Jennifer. I'll pass control to you, and it's all yours. There we go. Go ahead. You should be able to share screen now.
Got it. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for having me, Liz. This is a delight to be here today. I want to talk to you a little bit about virtual teaming, and it seems that everybody knows what that is, so we don't have to go through and define that for us. But you know, there's a lot of implication here for technical communicators and how we can drive virtual teaming and add value in it. So today, whether you're a student, whether you're an instructor of TechCom, or whether you're a seasoned practitioner, I hope you'll find something in this presentation for you, because I've put some things in here, especially for each one of those audience sectors. So today, what I want to tell you a little bit about is what you can gain from doing virtual team projects in coordinating those among universities and some industry representatives and industry organizations. So the partnerships that are and alliances that are built from that. So at the end of the session, we're going to talk a little bit today, and hopefully you'll understand by the end how online and on-campus academic programs can integrate virtual teaming projects into their curricula. We want to talk a little bit about how those teaming projects work for students, organizations, and educators, and understand a little bit more about what a student might get out of that, so that you can understand the value that it offers in pairing with a university partner. Just a little bit about me. Liz gave a great introduction. I don't think I really have much more to add. I teach at the Department of Technical Communication in Mercer University in Macon, Georgia. But I also want to acknowledge my colleagues here. I have two students, Evan Gamble and Jonathan Morey, who collaborated with me on an earlier version of this presentation and were valuable in some of the findings and lessons learned. I also want to give a shout out to my undergraduate and graduate classes in multimedia from the fall of 2019. You'll see that they played a great part in this as well. And of course, all the support that I'm given from the Department of Technical Communication at Mercer University. I've got a great team over there as well. So just before we get started here, you may say virtual teaming, this is so, 6 months ago, but let me just say that first off, we developed and piloted this program back in the fall of 2017. And so this was kind of a novel concept for us. It was a different kind of course design, and the virtual teaming aspect of it was especially unique at the time. We delivered the course again, or I delivered the course again to both of my undergraduate and graduate classes in the fall 2019. And at that point, I invited my classes to come and collaborate with me as we proposed a summit presentation for the STC conference in 2020 back in May. And so we delivered that, and we're thankfully successful in getting it submitted and selected in August of 2019. So now, whether we're a visionary or a peddler, peddling reused content, you can decide. But I assure you, we've been working on this for a while, and we put a lot of thought and planning into it. And it just happens to be that it's all the more relevant. So I hope that you'll just see that the current status of COVID-19 and virtual workspaces has only made this more relevant and more intriguing and hopefully more applicable to more audiences. So you all probably know what project-based learning is. It's not that new of a concept, but what we do in project-based learning from an academic standpoint is we pair students with real clients to solve real problems. What's the value? Well, the student isn't taking just a test on do they know and understand content, have they memorized definitions? No, they're looking at applying it. They're listening to the client, they're solving their problems, and they're helping to develop a customized deliverable that will help them meet the organizational needs. So real value in that. After all, students are going to do that when they graduate. So it really supports that engaged, application-based learning, and that's been a historically successful approach. So something that we want to kind of cling to as a kind of goal in our classrooms. It also supports trends in technology, globalization, geographically dispersed workforces, and the gig economy. After all, we want to train students to be doers, to be problem solvers, to go out and do their best in meeting those globalization and technology changes that are in our workforce. And so that has kind of led us to the need to address these new demands in virtual team projects. You know, especially now where the workforce is geographically dispersed, and even more so than just headquarters and locations across the world, but in people's homes. Organizations exist in people's homes and where they live and work and play now. And so these virtual team project experiences are really relevant. So let me give you a little background of where this took place. We have at Mercer an on-campus bachelor's program, 4-year traditional bachelor program in the School of Engineering, mostly regional students, and our majors take one of 4 concentrations. So they select something they're particularly interested in, and we guide them through some carefully selected courses to help them target and hone their skills in those areas. We also have a master's program. It's a 2-year Master of Science program, also in the School of Engineering, but we have a worldwide student population. These are mostly working adults. They have full-time jobs, so they come to class at night, and it's completely online. Throughout the week, they may work in their studies and in the classroom from time to time at their own schedule, at their own pace, but then they join us once a week for class time, and we meet for about an hour and a half and video chat, just like we're doing in Zoom. And the focus in that program is more on the managing of TechCom operations, the management of the programs, the management of the groups that produce TechCom. So we're real focused on management practice there. So on campus is more skills-based, and Masters Online is more towards the management of those productivity operations. So here's a little map of what this project looked like. You can see in the far right that our timeline was September to December. I mentioned this was in the fall semester, but our undergraduate students paired with a graduate student, and the graduate student was responsible from their working organization where they are employed full-time for selecting a problem that needed to be solved with a multimedia component. So they had to be kind of selective in what they could choose from, but these students were in charge of managing multimedia product production. And so they were looking for some ways to integrate or solve a problem in their workplace with those kind of constraints. Now, they had undergraduate students that we paired them with. We let the students somewhat self-select into that, but where there were some competitions, I employed my authority to kind of even out the team somewhat. But at any rate, these were the workers on the teams for these graduate student managers, and they were helping the organization solve the problem. So that's kind of the setup here. The management students, the graduate students, needed some experience in managing a real team. A lot of them are transitioning into management teams, management roles, or hope to one day. So they don't have a whole lot of management experience. The undergraduate students, they know the basics of TechCom, but now they're working on some of their more advanced skills. So think Adobe Creative Cloud, sound and video editing, programming, interactive, computer programming for instructional components. So that type of thing. So a lot of the programs that were selected, a lot of the problems and scenarios that were selected by our graduate students ended up being onboarding or some training or things like that. But you can kind of see through the bold blue assignment labels here, those were the deliverables that each group delivered and created. But then they were bounced back and forth because we were trying to simulate how this team would work in real life. And then they completed the project over November and December and then presented at the end of the semester. So the project, like I said, it was a multimedia project. Most of them were instructional in nature, and they provided these organizations some sort of true deliverable whereby the students had created a multimedia interactive package that they could distribute within their organization or even possibly to clients in some cases. The clients ranged in form and function, in industry. We had folks not only in the States, but we had some folks in China. So we had some international virtual teams playing into this semester as well. And overall, I can't tell you how successful this was. It was wonderful because the students who were graduate students, they were really kind of new to this idea of managing teams. And then we threw in the virtual component because they've never met and never would meet in the end their team members. But they did weekly meetings, sometimes bi-weekly meetings, so that they could collaborate on the project, set expectations, these sorts of things. The students were grateful because we talk a lot in undergraduate about what it's going to be like in the real world. And, you know, they do sometimes go out and solicit project-based assignments or a client external to the organization, or sometimes I find one for them. But this was the real sense that they had a manager and they worked for that manager, and they had to appease the manager's requests and request extra time when they needed extra time to meet a milestone. And so it was a great kind of role play about what things would look like in their hopefully future careers. So in the end, they delivered some fabulous multimedia packages, really neat interactive pieces, lots of media involved, as you can imagine, graphics, animations, as well as audio and visual, just really nice components. And I was really pleased with the results. And also importantly, the organizations were pleased with the results. So here's a few of the tools and resources that we used. I surveyed my classes. I said, what did you use this semester? And you can see some of the things that you would expect. Adobe Creative Suite, Captivate, Audacity, but then you also see some of the ways that they're using to collaborate, like Google Drive, GroupMe, Skype, Trello, WeChat, Wix, and Zoom. Now you may be surprised about WeChat, but there were some international restrictions with China about using GroupMe. So we learned that, and the manager suggested WeChat. And so my undergraduate students jumped on board, changed gears, and adapted to that situation, and were able to thrive with that tool. So these are some really neat ways that students were able to apply and find tools that met the needs of their projects. And because all the projects were different, not everybody used all of these, but these were all used over the course of the semester. So what we're trying to do is establish, like I said, these new norms for students. We want the graduate students to start to feel and act and perform like managers. We want them to rely on communication and being exact and precise in communication, being action-driven in their communication. And there was a bit of a learning curve with that. I didn't realize I would need to set a date or explain what that was. Well, we not only informed them of that, but hopefully caused them to not only say it in a meeting, but also follow up with email communication. To enact some productivity reports, how much is being done, review those reports and get the feedback back to the team members. And then taking on that additional authority. A lot of the managers, the graduate students, didn't have a whole lot of experience being the team authority in their current roles. And so it felt a little different. And so, I helped to coach and advise them on what that looked like and what roles and responsibilities and authority looked like as a team manager. And then it also helped them to understand what their team's responsibilities were. And so I also gave a lot of professor support from my role in helping them to shape what that might look like. Now, my undergraduates, they were also kind of new to the whole email communication. I remember one day I came to class and the students were surprised because the manager had gotten on to them that they had not responded within 24 hours to an email they sent. And they said, "What is this?" And I said, "Guys, this is the real world." People think that if you didn't respond back in 24 to 48 hours, that you didn't see the message. And they're used to responding within, 5 to 7 days because of class. And that was just a new norm for them. And so that rhythm of email communication, the rhythm and drive and patterns of normal workplace life was a good norm to experience for an undergraduate student who is heading in that direction. They also, had to mitigate and kind of implement some incentives for their productivity. If you will do this, then by this date, then we can move on to the next thing. And so they were having to kind of manage that and negotiate that with their managers. And so those incentives became very real in helping them to achieve those milestones that the managers had set out. They were very surprised that they had free reign of creativity. And I think this is one of the huge benefits of majoring in Tech Comm, is that there's so much creativity that you can apply. And it's a real drawing point for recruiting young professionals into the field. And they were delighted. The undergraduate students were just delighted to be able to apply some of that. They couldn't believe that they would be given free rein to solve these problems, and yet their managers were open to it, so I was open to it. I supported it. And then a lot of them just had to get used to being overseen by a manager. They were used to me giving a grade, and I said, "Nope, I'm going to step back from this, and you're going to answer to your manager. I'm going to grade based on that." So they were really kind of perplexed at first, but it ended up being a great trial run for them. So let me talk a little bit about this. Let's say you are an organization and you're thinking, well, how does this play out for me? Why might I benefit from that? Let me share some advantages and outcomes for you. If you're an organization, reach out to some Tech Comm programs. You can definitely reach out to me at Mercer, but there are so many programs across the country and around the world that really want to partner with organizations to address real problems. We have folks who do internships, class projects, multiple class projects per semester, per course sometimes. And we want to situate it in a real organization because the students get so much value out of that. And then you in turn get the value of having students coming on and helping with that. So that's great. Also, you can have, if you are able to work with some sort of manager or devote a manager or a stakeholder to our team, then you've got somebody on the team actively helping alongside the projects, because the students will reach out to somebody and they will negotiate and ask questions and give ideas to kind of help the leader or stakeholder or employee navigate the direction of the project. You gain some external talent. It's a structured process because it's under oversight from a faculty member, and it helps you have excellent records, and you can track all that because of all the activity that goes into producing some of these projects. And finally, you get a custom deliverable out of it. So it's a really nice way to kind of partner with an organization, not to mention you may find your next recruit at some of these projects. So definitely keep an open eye for talent in these programs. Now, if you're an educator, let me share some advantages and outcomes for you. Again, we're always looking for real problems, so this is a great way for us to find that connection between the classroom and real world application of Tech Comm. It helps train students to be team members, not just consultants, but team members. And because we want to push students past the the knowledge and skills level of Bloom's taxonomy, we're going towards apply. We're shooting for analyzing. We're shooting to evaluate. And so these projects, those get us into that upper levels of Bloom's taxonomy. We can support projects through timely expertise and guidance. So it enables us to act as a coach and to support them through that and to let them kind of struggle at certain times, because they learn so much more when they discover and solve problems on their own. It does enforce a structured process. So as you could see, we had a map for our project, but it did allow for the students to kind of grow and develop their own talents and use their own gifts to be able to solve these problems. We were able to collect evidence-based assignments from these projects. So we use those for our assessment within the organization, within the educational institution. And we, as a result, obtained some really outstanding deliverables that are a great way for us to recruit new students. And then let me just share, I mentioned I had a couple of students who collaborated with me. Evan pointed out from his standpoint, he was an undergraduate student, that he had a lot of value in those weekly video meetings. He gained a lot of information from his manager aside from what I had given him in class. So it gave him an idea of what was expected. They had group chat going on consistently in his team. And so that was a really easy way to get immediate responses. They had a collaboration of shared documents. And while they had some challenges, they also learned to work through those challenges related to remote work, like software or feedback delays. They had to establish some norms. And then finally, they also had the benefit of taking away some relevant work experience that I know for sure Evan put on his resume. Jonathan, similarly, also thought that the team experience was fabulous. They created a team contract to kind of set up some of those norms up front, and that helped them mitigate a lot of their misunderstandings early on so they could address them before they even came up. They also had a kickoff meeting, and this team's kickoff meeting, from what I understand, was quite time consuming, but it was so valuable to setting the team off in the right direction. They had weekly virtual meetings and had some collaborative tools which were really helpful to move their team forward. And they had a lot of support integrating the class content, the feedback that I gave them, as well as from their manager, that made their project a success. So in the end, why would we look at virtual teams? Aside from the whole COVID-19 thing, they are relevant. We have technology that can connect us to anyone, anywhere around the world. So they're especially relevant in today's workplace. They're respected and now expected. They're replicable. We can easily create a virtual meeting with anyone, anywhere, quite quickly, and we can set up ongoing meetings and periodic team check-ins real easily now. They're resource ready. You can see there's a lot of free tools. Google Meets is available to most people. Zoom is available. WebEx and others may have subscriptions, but these are really normally available now in organizations. So you can kind of jump off what's already there. They are recession proof. So this enables us to collaborate in other industries, other locations, other cities and states that may not be experiencing the downturn in hiring that our local situation has. And then it reinforces all the teamwork and communication skills that we talk about in class and that we need to have on the job. In fact, we just had our students, our seniors, give a presentation last week at Mercer on their summer internships. And one of my interns did a virtual internship with HP this summer in California. He was supposed to travel to California and spend the summer living there. Didn't quite work out, so we had to do a virtual assignment. And one of the things he said is, I wish before now, he hadn't been in this class, unfortunately, but I wish before now I'd had the experience of doing virtual presentations. And what a novel concept, right? He said it was so interesting because I gave my first presentation and I couldn't see any of the faces of my audience members. And that was just such a strange experience for me. I wish I'd had more experience in that. Integrating virtual team presentations and projects is a great way to encounter some of that while they're still in undergraduate study. So we're now incorporating that. I've got projects this semester based upon that. So at this point, I kind of want to stop. I want to take a break and I want to hear from you. I want to hear what your ideas and your experiences are. Maybe you've thought of some things that you envision virtual teaming working for you, or you thought about how your organization could reach out to do some virtual team collaborations with universities. So here's a few questions to get us started. What other topics? I chose multimedia because that's the framework that I delivered it in. But what other curricular topics might be conducive to virtual teaming projects? How can your organization get involved in virtual teaming projects? Are there other resources that you need to launch a virtual teaming project? And maybe you see some additional benefits I didn't cover. I'd love to hear from you and hear what you have to say about this topic.
So you and, while everybody's typing in, you and I were just talking about that, actually. I'm on one of the committees for STC, and we have actively sought out some student proposals at multiple universities to be a part of the reinventing, rewriting, restructuring, everything of the STC website. And yeah, I see one of our people in the audience who's going to find some students for us. But there's editing, there's information architecture, there's audience analysis, all things that we do, and anybody who wants to be a part of this, and we will take you too. But yeah, we've been struggling a little with that. We've got Slack, but we also have a senior person assigned to be the liaison with the students, the main contact, and they're answering questions on a regular basis. I don't know if we're doing everything perfectly, but you know. Anybody else got things? I know that some folks have some. Put your questions in the chat window. Let's see, here's one. You said kickoff meetings aren't always valuable, but your student said theirs was. Did you give any kind of detail as to what in particular made it valuable?
So we set up our project with a team contract. I made my students do a team contract, and that gave them an opportunity to talk a little bit about what kinds of norms and standards are going to be operational during the course of the project. So the kickoff meeting served a huge role in establishing that team contract. First off, we said, who's on the team? Introduce yourselves, get to know each other, but then tell us what your expertise levels are so that we can assign roles. So everybody adopted a role. And that kind of gave us an idea about who was going to do what and who wasn't going to infringe on other people's parts and so forth. It also helped us to create roles that were respected to people's talents and their own abilities. The other things that we did were we set up scope of work during those kickoff meetings. This is what we are going to solve, and these are the things we're not going to tackle this semester because those projects had to be somewhat small and short because we just don't have a whole lot of time over the course of the semester. We also set up some things like what's going to happen about if somebody can't be reached. What are some ways that we expect to communicate? When is it too late to have a communication or a call? How long do we need to wait before we check in on somebody if they haven't responded? Where are we going to store our files, and what is our checkout policy going to be on how we do data and version control? So all those things, we have a form that we fill out and send with our students and ask them to complete as part of a team contract. And they've gotten pretty good at it, but those types of questions that could cause bumps along the road, if we address them early in the kickoff meeting, that creates value because we push all of the storming phase away from team creation and we go straight to norming and performing. And that's what we want to do. We want them to start performing.
Interesting. I find it interesting, the match talent to role. That is particularly good for ad hoc or volunteer teams who are coming together. Never even occurred to me because that's slightly different from employment, right? Everybody's already hired into a role.
That's right. And so we had some students who maybe multimedia, they were taking multimedia because it reached a graduation requirement, but that wasn't their thing. Maybe technical writing and editing was theirs. Great. You can be the writer, you can be the researcher, and you can be in charge of all of our content and organizing it. And we'll let somebody else take the graphics side of things. And that worked out really well.
Nice. We are establishing norms. We heard that from your colleague in June, Pam Estes Brewer. She said setting that kind of stuff up early is really essential. And like you're showing that too.
we rely heavily on these contracts in all of our classes. It just helps students to understand what's expected of them and what they can expect from others. And it's a great way to start off any type of contract work if you're a consultant, but also if you're starting a new project. Get together with your team, talk about what's on the table before you, and see how you guys can agree to move forward in a collaborative nature.
Awesome. I'm anticipating we're going to have a question about whether we could see, or you're willing to share your team contract, or do you do that differently for each class, or is there some sort of template you work from?
Yeah, they're different from each class. I can share one of the templates I've used with my TechCom introduction class, and maybe that would be helpful. So I'd be happy to share that after the session.
Because we all know that not everybody can write up a job description well or do any of that. So like anything like that can help as our people want to become new managers and grow into management roles.
Yeah, it's all about having that critical conversation up front and documenting decisions so that when things come up, we can go back to it and everybody's got a copy and say, oh, now we know how to handle that.
Documenting, imagine that. All right, excellent. I don't see any more questions. Anybody else? Let that come in for a minute. All right. Did you have more slides, or was that the last one?
Well, this is just our summary slide. So this is what we've covered today. I think you can see that there's changes in technology. We've got globalization going on, and now we've got geographically dispersed workforces. So virtual teams are just relevant now. I showed you a few ways that a university has tackled it, and how we tackled it from actually offering 2 courses simultaneously and integrating those. But I also gave you some ideas for how to integrate industry as partners and to look for client relationships and use virtual teams to get that work done. So hopefully you can see that there's some promising project outcomes and some definite advantages for virtual teaming. And I hope that you guys can find something actionable that will drive your success wherever you are.
All right, so before we go, let's take a look at what's coming up.
Now it's time to type in those questions if you haven't already. And while you do, here's a look at what's coming up. The TC Dojo Mastermind Groups are monthly driven member discussion groups where attendees present their specific challenges to a group of their peers in a confidential, supportive environment. A mastermind is a collaborative environment where everyone lends their experience to each other. They can get feedback and advice about topics on their mind in real time from others who've been in their shoes. It's been amazing to participate in and a lot of fun too. We have 3 going on right now. One is everything TechCom, data, topic-based authoring, the specifics of cross-references or graphics. The other 2 are product-focused on Windchill for IT and ArborText users. These sessions are not free. They're a way to guarantee commitment between the participants. You can sign up at the TC Dojo website at mastermind.tcdojo.org. We know sometimes magic is just having the time to collaborate with someone who's been where you are.
All right, so we had one question here. It was, let me see what it's, pairing with industry. I'm not sure. But that's come up before because TechCom usually doesn't have the budget. They're not in the front of everybody's mind. But we've got things that we need to figure out sometimes. So if they had something like they needed somebody to do UX review or do an edit pass of some pages or some kind of other review, could they come up with a project that would be suitable for students?
Absolutely. So I would reach out to your local TechCom department or reach out to us. We'd love that. And we'd love to collaborate or even point you in another direction if we know somebody else who would be better served. We have a UX program that's very strong. And so we're all the time partnering with lots of programs. We've been working with the Department of Homeland Security, believe it or not, for 5 years working on their websites. We've worked with the Georgia Pines Library because we met them at conferences and told them what we did and they got really excited about it. So don't be afraid to ask. It's just about making connections wherever you are. You never know what types of mutually beneficial activities can go on when you reach out to an educational program like that.
Thanks for coming to the Single Sourcing Solutions TC Dojo, where it's all about you, what you want to learn. You should always attend a webinar live because you can't ask questions of a video. Subscribe to our TC Dojo mailing list at join.tcdojo.org and never miss another. Every month, we go out and find experts willing to share their expertise based on your votes in the TC Dojo survey. Why should we tell you what to learn? You should tell us. So be sure to vote at survey.tcdojo.org. The TC Dojo is our pleasure to host. As always, if you need more personal help, we're here to take you from the basics to mastery. See you next time.